Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Rhino, and in today's video I get to review one of the tanks that I have wanted for absolutely ages to enter World of Tanks console, and that is this tank here. It's the Caliban, which is a Tier 8 British premium heavy tank, and it's been in World of Tanks PC for about 8 months, and since its inception in World of Tanks PC I have wanted it in the console version, and luckily as of today on the 23rd of August it has been released into World of Tanks console, and I get to review it and play it for everyone out there. So the Caliban, what is it? Well, it is a 2-shot auto reloading tank that has a very large caliber gun, a 152.4mm caliber gun that is capable of insane burst damage that you can see when we talk about the details in the Excel spreadsheet that I've created in just a little bit. But Wargaming Console have also added a single fire gun option for people that don't like the auto reloading mechanic, which I think is a nice surprise. And yeah, in today's video I shall be going over everything that the Caliban can do, all of the stats of the Caliban. I'll show you the armor profile here on tanks.gg to show you how this armor holds up at tier 8, and I'll also be showing you my commander and equipment setup should you wish to play the Caliban as I have done in the gameplay that will follow this review, where I will hopefully demonstrate how to play the Caliban as best as possible with the single fire and also the 2-shot auto reloading gun package. This tank is an absolute derp, an absolute meme of a tank with this big caliber gun. It's kind of a cross between a tank destroyer and a heavy tank. But before we get into the stats of the Caliban, let's have a look at the price, and it doesn't make pretty reading at all. So for the primed bundle it's 16,320 gold, and of course that comes with equipment, premium time and boosters, as well as the hero skin. That's still a lot of money for a World War II tier 8 premium tank. For the fully loaded bundle it's 14,930 gold, and if you just want the tank on its own, which does come with the skin, which is a nice addition, it's still 13,360 gold. If you live in the UK, that's about £45 worth of gold, and you can convert that to whatever currency that you buy stuff for World of Tanks console in. It's a lot of money for a tier 8 premium tank. You're going to have to think long and hard whether you want this tank, and if you like sort of derpy high alpha damage tanks, or tanks that have crazy burst damage, this one might be the one for you. But it does have terrible DPM and pretty damn bad gun handling. In terms of the DPM, I just want to draw your attention to something very important from this article that Wargaming Console have put up on their website about the Caliban, and that is the DPM that they say the Caliban has with the auto reloading gun package. This is not really a true reflection of the true DPM of the Caliban. So whenever World of Tanks Console put out a auto reloading tank, they calculate the DPM as if it was fully loaded, whereas for every other tank that has like single fire gun packages or just a normal autoloader, they calculate the DPM as if the tank was dry. So don't go thinking this tank has a fantastic DPM, because it really doesn't. I don't want you going out thinking, you know, it's 2,763 DPM, that's insane, the alpha damage is insane, the burst damage is insane, I'm going to go out and get it now. Hold your fire, watch a couple of reviews, make your mind up, because it doesn't have good DPM at all. So with that caveat discussed, let's head over here to the Excel spreadsheet, where I'm going to compare the Caliban's 2-shot auto reloading gun package here on the left to the Caliban single shot gun package on the right. The Caliban has come over from PC with the 2-shot auto reloader with exactly the same stats that's on PC, which is very rare for a tank to come over into console and not get nerfed, and thankfully it didn't, because this does have absolutely terrible DPM and gun handling. But before we get talking about the stats, let's talk about the bonuses that this tank has, as it is a premium tank. So you get a 10% XP bonus, nothing on your commander XP, but you also get a 50% silver bonus, which is very nice. And now we get into the first stat we're going to talk about, and that is the hit points. So the Caliban has 1,500 hit points, which is about average for a tier 8 heavy tank, so nothing to complain about there. And in terms of the view range, it's very poor indeed at 370 meters, meaning that you're going to want to do everything you can to boost that up if you want to spot for yourself, especially when you're in a sort of tier 9 or tier 10 game, and I'll tell you how you can do that with the equipment and commander setup in just a little bit. And for anyone that doesn't know, the things highlighted in yellow are the updated stats of the Caliban with my commander and equipment setup added to the raw stats of the vehicle, and I'll talk you through my equipment and commander setup in just a little bit. But moving on to the mobility, and it's kind of good and bad news. It has a very decent horsepower engine at 950 horsepower, a very decent power to weight ratio at 23.36, but it does have very bad top forward and reverse speeds at 33 kilometers an hour forwards and 12 kilometers an hour in reverse. And of course you can improve this with the mobility equipment, but I highly recommend you don't because of the terrible gun handling and DPM of the Caliban, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, as I have said just a second ago. In terms of the traverse speeds, it's 30 degrees a second on the whole, which isn't too bad for a heavy, but it does have a very bad turret traverse at 23 degrees a second, and you can improve that with your setup. This means that you might struggle to get your gun around and actually hit what you're shooting at if they're a very fast sort of light tank or medium tank and they're trying to circle you. But now we get on to the most important aspect for a derpy tank like the Caliban, and that is the gun. So the PC version have said that this tank has a 152.4mm gun, whereas the Wargaming console have said that this has a 6-inch, much like my girlfriend says about me, I'm sure. But I want to use the 152.4mm figure. Of course, 6 inches is the same as 152.4mm, and you'll find out why I want to use the 152.4mm figure to prove a point when we talk about the armour. So I've said that this 2-shot auto-reloading gun package is here on the left, the single shot is here on the right. In terms of the ammunition type, the shell velocity, pen and damage, it's the same on both the auto-reloading and on the single-fire gun package. The only thing that changes is the DPM and gun handling, which we'll talk about in just a second. So the Caliban, it can fire HESH or APCR. There's only 2 different types of ammunition. With the HESH rounds, you have a 354 meters a second shell velocity, so absolutely ridiculously slow. You're going to have to give so much lead on this round at mid to long ranges. The penetration on this round is 180mm, but that's actually quite good for a HESH round that has such high alpha damage in it, 850 alpha damage. 180mm is more than enough to go through quite a lot of the armoured plates that you're going to come across, especially at tiers 6, 7 and 8, and even some of the lightly armoured tanks at tiers 9 and 10, and you do have that whopping 850 alpha damage. And with the APCR rounds, you still have a very slow shell velocity, albeit a little bit better than the HESH, at 500 meters a second, but at mid to long ranges you're going to have to give a lot of lead with this APCR round and the HESH round, and it does work better up close and personal as a heavy tank or a support heavy tank in this case should play. With the APCR rounds, you have a whopping 292mm of penetration, which is absolutely insane and more than enough to go through everything you will come across, even super heavies at tier 10 if you know where to shoot, and you get 600 alpha damage for that. So as this is a 2-shot auto reloader, you do have the capacity to use this as a autoloader and fire the 2 shots off with the 3.7 second interclip reload that this tank has, meaning that you can have a 1700 alpha damage burst in 3.75 seconds if you're firing HESH, or 1200 alpha damage burst if you're firing the APCR, meaning that you can do the equivalent of a sort of tier 8 heavy tank plus a little bit extra in under 4 seconds, which is absolutely insane. Crazy burst damage, but obviously there has to be a balancing factor, and now we're going to get onto that, and that is the gun handling and the DPM. So the aim time for the auto reloading package and the single fire gun package is 4.1 seconds, so a very long aim time indeed, and the accuracy is terrible at 0.58 on the 2-shot auto reloading gun package, but it does get slightly better on the single fire gun package at 0.52, but still very bad indeed, and you're going to want to take all the gun handling perks that you can. In terms of the DPM and the rate of fire, this figure here is the rate of fire that Wargaming say this tank has, and that's if this thing was fully loaded. This is the DPM that Wargaming has said that you have, but I've got the true DPM reflection, as if this thing was dry under here, which is highlighted in blue. With the 2-shot auto reloading gun package, the first shell to enter your magazine takes 40 seconds to reload, and the second shell takes 25 seconds to reload, meaning that to get both of the shells in the magazine, it takes over a minute of reloading to get that burst damage in your magazine. So a very long reload indeed. And over here you can see that the reload for the single fire gun is 22.5 seconds, so a little bit better than the 25 seconds for the first shell on the 2-shot auto reloader, meaning that it will have a slightly better DPM as well as the slightly better gun handling, and that's the difference between both of the gun packages. So what's the DPM then on the 2-shot auto reloader? Well, if you are loaded and you are firing just the first shell, so the second shell that you have reloaded into the gun, your DPM will be 2040, so much worse than the 2763 that Wargaming have quoted. And if you are firing the shell that takes 40 seconds to reload, your DPM drops to 1275 seconds, and that's if you're firing HESH out of this gun. If you're firing APCR out of this gun and you're firing the shell that takes 25 seconds to reload, your DPM is a lowly 1440, but it's by no means as bad as the DPM if you are firing APCR and the shell that takes 40 seconds to reload over and over again. Your DPM drops to 900, which is absolutely god-awful. It's abysmal, worst in class. So I highly recommend reloading both shells and only firing both shells if necessary, and continuously firing the first shell or the second shell to enter the magazine to improve your DPM or keep it as good as you can. On the single fire gun package, the DPM on the HESH rounds, or the true DPM with the HESH rounds, is 2,266, which isn't too bad at all. I nearly choked up there, my voice broke for some reason at 31. And if you're firing the APCR rounds on the single fire gun package, your DPM drops to 1,600. So yeah, very bad DPM, not as good as advertised. I don't know what that pop-up is. Let's just get rid of that one, as it takes me back to the website, back into the Excel spreadsheet, and yeah, very bad DPM, not as good as advertised because of the way that they calculate the DPM. So yeah, definitely be warned of that. You carry 30 rounds of ammunition, so more than enough really with that terrible rate of fire to last you most battles. I'm pretty sure you're not going to run out unless you have some kind of epic best in the world kind of game. In terms of the gun depression, it's great at 10 degrees. That's more than enough to use many ridgelines in the game. And in terms of the elevation, it's 12 degrees, so watch out for that. That's not very good at all. If you're sort of looking downwards or on a slope downwards and you're trying to shoot up, that will mean that you will struggle to get your gun on target to your enemies. So we'll talk about the commander and equipment setup in just a little bit, but we're going to head over to the armor viewer on tanks.gg and see how the armor of the Caliban holds up. So you can see here from the front, I'm using the Caliban's 6-inch or 152.4mm gun with the 292 penetration APCR rounds, and we'll see how the effective armor is. You can see it's all green, but that's because the 292mm of penetration is absolutely insane. So the frontal hull of the Caliban, if you're looking at it dead on, has an effective armor range of kind of 250 at the highest point towards the top of the upper hull of effective armor, and about 230 towards the lower part of the upper hull. And if you're looking at it dead on and trying to shoot the lower plate, you're going to need about 165mm of penetration or above to go through the Caliban's lower plate. And if you're looking at it dead on, it's not using any of its gun depression, and you're trying to shoot the turret, you're going to need about 250mm plus of penetration to go through almost all of it. On the left side, you're going to need a little bit more, sort of going up towards 256 to 260mm of penetration, but it does have this cupola on top, which is only 65mm of raw armor, and if you're looking at it dead on, that's going to be an easy penetration. You're only going to need sort of between 60 and 80mm of penetration, or even less if you get lucky, to go through that. If the Caliban's sort of angled at a 40-45 degree angle, the upper plate goes to about 250-240mm of effective armor towards you. And if you shoot the outside of the upper hull, which I don't recommend you do, there'll be auto ricochet angles, and it also goes up to about 270 to 290 millimeters of effective armor. The lower plate, if it's angling like this, is about 180 millimeters thick at the highest point, so you'll need that much to go through. The side armor of the Caliban is terrible at 35 millimeters of armor, meaning that it doesn't side scrape well at all, and you have this gigantic box on the back, and you can shoot this point here, this armor plate here, if this thing's side scraping, and go through it. You only need 35 millimeters or more of penetration to go through that bit, and that's where the engine is. You can set that thing on fire very, very easily, or the Caliban on fire very easily if you shoot that. If this tank is using the full extent of its gun depression, which is 10 degrees, if I can get this thing to stay on 10 degrees, roughly like that, then you're going to be looking at about 280 plus millimeters of effective armor on the upper hull, and on the turret you're looking at about 290 millimeters of effective armor on the turret, in the middle part of the turret. But if you want to go through, just shoot the top of the turret if this thing is using the full extent of its gun depression. You'll need about 240 plus millimeters to go through, or you could just shoot the cupola, but it can bounce quite a few shells at the sort of same tier or lower tier. And it is quite effective armor, or it's usable armor I should say, for a heavy tank if it's using the full extent of its gun depression. But if it's not, then this tank does struggle. One thing to note is that this big box on the tank means that if you were looking over the back of the tank, you only have 3 degrees of gun depression, and you're going to struggle to shoot anything over the back of this tank. It can be a real pain in the bottom when you're running away from enemies, you're trying to shoot them. If you're something low profile, this thing just can't get its gun down on you. Only 3 degrees over the back, so do watch out for that. And now you'll get to the question, well, why did you mention you're using the 152mm gun figure on the Caliban? And the reason for that is because of the overmatch mechanics. So because this tank has a 152.4mm caliber gun, it means that you can overmatch every single 50mm plate in the game. And that is because you times 50mm plate by 3, which is 150 millimeters. You plus 151 millimeters, and you need 151 millimeter caliber gun or more to go through 50 millimeter armored plates. And the best example, which I've got from watching Quickie Baby, it's just the PC Water Tanks console community, the Water Tanks PC community contributor, I should say. It means that you can go through the top of a Stritzfon 103B with either the HESH or APCR. You're just going to overmatch it, and it's very important. So every single 50mm plate, look up the armor profiles of tanks, find a 50mm plate, you should be able to overmatch the tank. For instance, if you're in a Caliban, you'll be able to overmatch the side of the Caliban, as it's only 35mm. You'll see here, even if it's angling at an extreme angle, you are going to overmatch the side of this tank. And that's why I use the 152.4mm figure, because you can overmatch 50mm plates. If you get behind this tank, it hasn't got any armor at all behind the turret. 21mm of effective armor, 35mm of effective armor on the back. This is the engine. You're going to go through it. You're going to set this thing on fire. So we're going to go back to the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to tell you my commander and equipment setup, and then we'll get stuck into the gameplay. So what equipment do I run on the Caliban? Well, you can run advanced optics, gun stabilizer, and advanced gun lane drive like me, and you can also run Sixth Sense, Born Leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, run and gun, off-road driving, and situational awareness on your commander. The reason I have chose to use optics is because of that terrible view range, and gun stabilizer and gun lane drive to help the gun handling of the Caliban. And in terms of my commander, I run Sixth Sense and Born Leader as standard, rapid loading to help the DPM, every single gun handling perk that I can find, as well as situational awareness to help the view range. So what does that do to the stats of the Caliban? Well, you can see here that it's improved my view range to 473 meters, which is respectable for a tier 8 heavy tank. It's also improved my turret traverse, which was terrible, to 27.48 degrees a second, which is close to 30 degrees a second on the whole of the Caliban. And down here on the gun handling, you can see that it's improved my aim time on the two-shot auto-reloading gun package to 3.32 seconds, the same as the single fire gun package. It's improved my accuracy to 0.38, which is a hell of a lot better than 0.58 on the two-shot auto-reloading gun package, and to 0.34, which is a lot better than the 0.52 on the single-fire gun package. And you can see here that it's also improved my reload. So now, to reload the first shell in the magazine on the two-shot auto-reloading gun package, it takes me 33.15 seconds, and for the second shell, 20.72 seconds, and on the single-fire gun package, it takes me 18.65 seconds to reload one shell. So what does that mean in terms of the DPM then? Well, if I am using the two-shot auto-reloading gun package, and I am just continuously firing the shell that takes 25 seconds to reload, my DPM has jumped up to 2,461, and if I'm continuously using the 40-second shell that takes to reload, my DPM is 1,538, and if I'm using APCR, then my DPM is 1,737 seconds if I'm firing the 25-second shell to reload, and it drops down to 1,086 DPM if I'm using the 40-second shell that takes to reload. In terms of the DPMs on the single-fire gun package, if I'm using HESH, my DPM is 2,734, which is actually pretty good, and my DPM on the APCR rounds is 1,930, so not the best, but it's much more manageable than the terrible DPMs that this tank comes with raw. So you're going to have to choose whether you want the burst damage and that potential to have that crazy burst damage, worse gun handling and worse DPM, or you're going to want to choose better DPM, better gun handling, but you don't have that burst damage with the single fire gun package. And that's pretty much covering the whole of the Caliban for you there. Let's get stuck into the gameplay and see what we can get up to. So here's the first gameplay of today's video. We're here in the Caliban on Malinovka. This is a tier 10 battle, and we are starting off with 2 single shot replays. So we are using the same commander and equipment setup that I've shown you in the review at the start of this video. With the single fire gun, you could choose to use the advanced reload piece of equipment that lets you swap out a shell without any penalty to the reload, depending on whether you want to fire HESH or AP at that particular time. However, I just prefer to have the view range, and it becomes particularly important when you're in a tier 10 battle and you're coming up against tier 9, 10 tanks that have really good view range and some great concealment there as well. So it's very handy to be able to spot for yourself. That gives you a little bit of boost to your XP, and it just means that you're able to spot things out for yourself, although we are struggling at the start of this battle as we advance very slowly into position with the Caliban's pretty damn terrible top speed. I'm just hoping to get to the dip in front of me behind that hard cover so I can get out of the way. Eventually we do spot that batch at 12T. Once he has fired at me, we do take a substantial amount of damage, over half our health already gone, but we do get that batch at 12T taken out of the game, and we're already up with 1,000 assistance damage, and now we're into the position that I want to be in. We can use our gun depression here on this ridgeline. We can try and spot out towards the hill here on Malinovka and get some side shots in to some targets up there. It's going to be pretty difficult to lead the targets at this range, even though it's kind of a mid-range, because of the terrible shell velocity on the HESH and the AP rounds. However, we will do our best, and I believe one of these shots actually hits, and it's quite a good shot, if I do say so myself, and I was kind of surprised that I actually managed to pull it off. It does take a while to get used to the shell velocity with the Caliban, but once you've got the hang of it, it's pretty fun. I don't really recommend switching in between this and other tanks in a play session, because it will really catch you out with the shell velocity. So we're trying to acquire a target on this E75. It looks like he's backing up the whole way, so we do put a substantial amount of lead in, and we managed to get a shell there for 585 damage into the side of the tier 9 German heavy tank, and it's amazing to be able to chunk off massive amounts of hit points off of tier 9 and tier 10 tanks, and it really does put your team at an advantage. That's going to help our team battling for the hill. We're just trying to pop up here and get some extra view range towards the north, and also towards the north east of the map on top of that hill, so hopefully we can get some extra view range and we don't get surprised by anyone hiding next to that little ruin or that castle there, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the field. So that's how you're going to want to play this tank with the single shotgun when you're in a tier 10 match. It's just this kind of support heavy tank. You're definitely not going to want to be brawling. You don't have the DPM to be able to be sat up there brawling with other heavy tanks, especially when you are bottom tier, because they will just rip you to shreds and they have enough penetration to go through your turret, even if you are using the full extent of your 10 degrees of gun depression. So it looks like there's no one else straight ahead of me there to the right of the hill. They're preoccupied, so I'm going to come up here and get a shot through the driver wheel of that KV-4 with AP rounds with that fantastic penetration of 292mm. No problem going through the side of that KV-4, and that boosts our damage already just with 2 shots over 1100 damage. We're going to carry on moving. This is a bit risky because such poor gun handling on the Caliban, but we managed to get the shell into the back of that T-28 prototype to take him out, and now we're going to advance up behind the heavy tanks here and see if we can get a couple of extra shots in at the end of this game. Just going to try and predict when this Object 279E is going forwards. He does go forward into our shell, and because of the high caliber round we managed to set him on fire for a little bit of extra damage, and within 4 shots we're already up to 2.2k damage with over 1100 assistance. We have blocked a round, and it's just showing you all of the good points about the Caliban and how to play it as a support heavy when you are bottom tier. Of course it won't always go like this, and you'd have to be in the right situation for it to work, but when you're able to do things like this to an Object 279E, so crazy tier 10 Soviet heavy tank, and you can chunk them down. I wish I was firing the HESH rounds there, because it probably would have penetrated and we would have finished him off, and it looks like it's going to be our downfall. I'm going to have to try and make the 292mm of pen work here on the hull of the 279A, but he slopes slightly backwards, so there's hardly any chance there, and that's when the advanced reload skill would, or the piece of equipment I should say, would have come in handy. We would have been able to just splash him to death there, but still a pretty decent game as a support heavy when you're bottom tier. It didn't look like we did an awful lot, and to be honest we didn't have an awful lot to do, but what we did was have as much of an impact as we could have in our bottom tier 8 heavy tank, and we helped our team take that one down. As I was getting a bit worried this 279E was going to take the rest of my team out, because everyone was just going one by one into him, as you shouldn't do. You should all gang up together at the end and go in at once, but it looks like we have enough tanks on full health to be able to take this one down. This IS-7 is going to destruct the 279E, and I believe our Turan, yes that's right, takes the shot into the side of the 279E and takes that one down for us. So we finished that game with the MVP slot with 2 kills, 3k damage, 1100 assistance, 1507 base experience points, and with the silver bonus or the silver boost that's going on at the moment with the op that you get extra silver for tiers 8, 9 and 10, we make 212,000 silver, so a very nice profit indeed. And that's a very good example of how to play the Caliban when you are using a single fire gun and you are bottom tier as a support heavy tank. So we're going to head on over now to the other single shot replay and see how we get on in that one as well. So we're now into the second replay of the video. We are still using the single fire gun package on the Caliban, and again we are bottom tier. Unfortunately I don't have a top tier replay for you using the single fire gun package, but we still have a result worthy of being top tier in this game. So as we are bottom tier, I was thinking about heading down the middle, and then I remembered that we were bottom tier. So I'm going to head over towards the north of this map, sort of central towards the north, and try and get some side shots into the tanks that are making their way up into the northeastern corner. I'm going the long way around here because of the mobility and it being so poor in terms of its top speed. I don't want to get caught out in the open. There is an artillery per side, so I don't want to get taken out at the start of this battle. You can see here how slow it is to get into position, but fortunately there's enough sort of super heavies, big heavy tanks, that we are kind of outpacing them, and we spawned in a fortunate location. So we're going to come up on this ridgeline straight in front of me. It's a great location to get early shots in as players make their way into position towards the sort of north and the northeast corner of this map, and it means that the shell from the artillery on the enemy side is more unlikely, or less likely I should say, to actually hit me with the hill there. It does disrupt the shell up just a little bit, so I'm going to try and be as high on this ridgeline as possible without exposing myself to the tanks in front of me. We snap a shot in there, free aimed, and we managed to penetrate a HESH shell into a tier 10 medium tank, the M60, for 811 damage, and oh my god, it's so fun when you penetrate with this tank. I thought I missed, but that's just the extremely bad shell velocity. These shells really do loop, and I have no idea where that one went. You might find that shell in the next game that you play on WoT Tanks console. One good thing about these shells that are looping is that you can sometimes use the auto aim feature to lock onto a target, and even if you don't have a direct line of sight when you look down the reticle, you are able to loop your shells over ridge lines, and that means that you are immune from their damage unless they have a similar gun, and you are able to put round after round into them or just splash them or something like that. And it's the same kind of deal with the Storm Tiger. You can loop your shells over ridge lines whilst you are safe behind your ridge line, and it's absolutely hilarious when you do that. So you saw us get our second shell of the game there. We're still loading the HESH into that 4502A, and we penetrated again, and we're already up to 1584 damage, and there's still 14 tanks on either side. Give a lot of lead to that Tiger 2, and we roll really nice and high there on that Tiger, over 900, and now we're up to 2.5k within the first 3 shots of this battle. And you can see when this gun does get going and when you are allowed to reload, this thing really does chunk tanks down. So find a position where you are able to reload in safety, or you have support to distract your enemies, pop out, get your shell in, and then surprise and ambush your opponents. And you're going to want to do that whether you're bottom or top tier. You can be more aggressive with your armor when you are top tier, and we'll see that a little bit later on with the auto-reloading gun package in one of the replays. However, it's kind of the same gameplay. There are lots of tanks at tiers 8, 9 and 10, even below that at tiers sort of 6 to 8, that are going to be able to out DPM you, and with your armour being okay but nothing to rely upon, especially when you are bottom tier, then you are trying to hide as much of your tank as possible and only expose your turret when necessary. So we're up to 3.4k damage now, and we're just looking for a shell into the Malshin. We would be able to penetrate the cupola on the Malshin with the fantastic AP rounds that we are now firing. However, he's gone behind the ridgeline, and it's very hard to lead weak points with this terrible shell velocity, but it can be done. So we know that this M60 is moving. We fire at him there. It looked like it bounced, but I think we just missed. It is quite hard to hit fast moving targets, especially light tanks can be a real pain with that very slow turret traverse as well, so do bear that in mind. It looks like we've cleared out the north, and now we're just going to pay our attention to the centre of this map and back towards where the enemy spawn in. We're going to go for a shell on the move here, and it so nearly hits that T30. That would have been an epic shot to put in a meme compilation. And what kind of fitting tank to play than this very memey derpy tank. It's definitely not a tank that you want to play that seriously at all. It can be competitive in certain situations, but if you're going out to have epic games every single time, then this won't be the tank for you. It's just a fun tank, a good silver earner, and it's hilarious when you do penetrate people, and when you are using the auto-reloading package and you can nearly one-shot a tier 9 or 10 tank, then it is absolutely hilarious, as you might see later on in this video. So we're coming up behind this Panzer Kampfwagen 7 here. We're going to get a shell right into the side of this tank, roll nice, well, roll slightly low, I should say, and we put him down to a one-shot. We get smacked by the enemy artillery, but we're getting some spotting on the M60 that's in their base. We still have 686 hit points to play with, and I'm not shy of playing on my hit points at the end of the game. If I get taken out now, it doesn't really bother me too much because we've already won the game. I just want to get some more damage in, some more experience, and some more silver. So we're coming up behind the last two remaining heavies. The artillery is getting closed in on, so he should be taken out. And I do have my eye on some of the mouse's hit points. I'm very aware that if I fire now into one of these tanks, I'm likely to be taken out by them, but that doesn't really bother me at all. We are firing the AP rounds, so we have enough penetration to even go through the tier 10 German super heavy, the mouse, and hopefully we can come up and get a shot into his side. We'll make sure we make this last shot count, and then maybe distract him for one of our friendly tanks. So he's angling relatively well, over-angling to us. We're able to go through his side, and now we're going to try and get around the other side of him. He tries to ram us to death. We try and juke him, but the poor mobility means that we're just going to get taken out now. Just going to distract him long enough so our teammates can get at least one more shot in, and then he should be finished off relatively quickly by this E75 and our tank destroyer. That's face-hacking the mouse. That's never going to go too well because that thing weighs an absolute many tons. But that's it for that gameplay, where we had a great game really for the Caliban in a tier 10 match. We finished MVP again with 5,443 direct damage, 291 assistance, 1,839 base experience points, 2 kills, and just shy of 300,000 silver. So fantastic result for the single fire gun. And now we're going to get into the last two replays of today's video, which are demonstrating the auto reloading gun package. So we're now into the third gameplay here in the Caliban. We are now using the 2-shot auto-reloading gun package, and we're here on Sunset Coast, so we're going to head very sluggishly into position. We're going to go towards the centre of this map and try and be a support heavy in the centre where the heavies like to brawl out. And the one benefit about being so slow is that by the time you get to the battle, you are actually reloading, because this does take an age. You can see we are still reloading the first shell into the magazine. That's with everything we can be doing to try and boost our DPM up as much as possible. So when we get into position here, we're going to try and get sort of one ambush shot in on any light tanks or medium tanks that are trying to sort of scout out at the start of this battle. I'm not going to be pushing too far forward. I would probably push a little bit further forward in maybe a more heavily armoured or more competitive tier 8 premium heavy tank, although we have to bear in mind that this game is a game where we are bottom tier, so we do have to be very careful, and this game is going to be more indicative of the kind of games that you're going to be expecting in the Caliban when you are bottom tier if you play sensibly. I was very fortunate to have two fantastic games in this single fire gun package when we are bottom tier, but this is probably more of an indication of the kind of damage you can expect in a very sort of sensibly played battle in the Caliban when you are bottom tier. So we're just looking to get our first shell into one of these tanks in the middle, and it's just all about biding your time. I'm not going to say this replay is particularly enthralling, especially for the start of this battle, because we are just trying to pick our target, pick our time to ambush a tank. I'm more than willing to take a shot in return if I manage to get a good roll, or I'm going to put 2 shots into another tank. However, if I'm going to be going out and getting blasted by 2 tanks and missing a shot and having to snap my shot in, it's just not going to be worth it for the rest of the battle. We managed to track that WWII S5 in the centre. We get some assistance for it, and we get 238 damage of our own. We are loading HESH from the start there. I've now switched to the AP rounds. I just wanted to see if I can catch a lightly armoured target at the start of the battle. That's one of the problems when you don't run the advanced reload piece of equipment, is that you just can't switch out the shells to something, but I much prefer to have the view range like we discussed earlier on in today's video. I think it just helps you out more often than the other piece of equipment would help you out, and I prefer having the ability to spot for myself. There's an enemy Caliban on the other team, so we do have to be careful of that tank because he can overmatch our sides and he can penetrate us very, very easily. And you can see the absolute age you do have to wait. This does have worse DPM with this shell, or this first shell in the magazine. It does have slightly worse DPM than the single fire gun package, and it also does have that worse gun handling, so you do have to bear that in mind. And if you were asking me what gun I would prefer, I'd probably prefer this for the memes, and if I'm going to be trying to be a bit more competitive, I'd probably prefer the single fire gun because of the DPM. And this can get a little bit frustrating if you're playing too many games in the Caliban. It can get a little bit boring. It is fun to one-shot people and absolutely chunk them down, but after a while it's nice to play something with a bit of speed, with a bit of armour, or something a little bit different. And I'm just trying to fire the first shell in this magazine over and over again to keep my DPM as high as possible. I'm reluctant to fire both shells unless I know I can do a substantial amount of damage to a tier 10 tank or something like that, or I'm able to take a tank out of the game. We've spotted this T-54 Mod 1, just waiting for him to back up so we can ambush him. He doesn't know we're here until now, tries to back out of the way. We give ourselves enough time to aim in the shot and we take him out there, pushing our damage total over at 1200 damage. We got 90 assistance earlier from the WWII IS-5 and we've blocked 620 damage. Taking shots in the rear as the enemies are moving around the south and towards the sort of 9-0 line towards our base. I'm going to try and come up here behind my heavies. I don't want to be fighting any tanks on my own. I've noticed that this T100 LT is trying to flank us, trying to get into position to get an ambush shot in on him, and I do notice that there's these heavies behind or in front of me on this ridge line. I was expecting this T100 LT to come up that little dip there, but unfortunately he goes behind that other rock and we do get spotted. I tried to lurch forward so we didn't get spotted, so I could try and ambush the heavies that were below me now, but I believe they have moved on, so we're going to have to try and support our tanks that are all centrally located in this battle. It's a very close battle, but we are up by 2 tanks. There is this Chieftain Mark 6, which we are going to try and auto-aim very lazily, and that's what happens when you don't let it fully aim and you don't manually aim. You derp into the ground in this gun. I'm going to boost my combat rations, get my shell back in so we have 2 shots in the magazine, and you can see how frustrating this is. I could just pop out now and fire at the Super Conqueror, but I'm waiting until I got 2 shots. I'm going to go for the drive wheel once. We managed to set the Super Conqueror on fire, and I'm going to have to fire the other one just in case he puts the fire out and gets another shot into us, because we've only got 734 hit points left. But it's very satisfying being able to tap a tier 10 heavy tank, and now we have this monstrous reload. So if you don't like long reloads, this tank definitely isn't going to be the one for you. It does take an age, especially with this auto reloading gun package. If you get sort of frustrated and bored very easily, yeah, don't do this. But if you enjoy the derpy sort of meme style gameplay and you like one shot in tanks of the same tier and below, and you like, you know, absolutely wrecking tier 9 and 10 tanks with a tier 8 heavy tank, then it can be a lot of fun. It's definitely not a serious tank, it's just a tank to have a laugh about in and have some pretty funny shots that you can derp over ridge lines and that kind of thing. So this was a typical kind of game that you're going to be expecting when you try and play a support role. You can't be too aggressive, you can't really rely on your armour, so you just have to support your friendly tanks, but you can still have a relatively good input and you can get some good damage and make a little bit of silver, and we fortunately get there just in time in front of that mouse to finish off the HMH M51. So that was the first gameplay in the 2-shot auto reloading gun package. On Sunset Coast we finish with 3 kills, 1436 base experience points, 2.6k direct damage, 90 assistance, and we are blocked over 1,000, which was quite surprising for a tier 10 battle. And we make a nice profit of 151,000 silver. So we're going to head on now into the final replay of today's video, where we are playing the 2-shot auto-reloading gun package again, but we are finally top tier. So you're joining me here on Great Wall. A minute into this battle in the Caliban, we are using the auto-reloading gun package and we are finally top tier. So I was hoping to have a good start to this battle. I've cut out the first minute because it's just tank driving simulator. This is what you shouldn't do in the Caliban: fire auto-aimed without even aiming in the whole way. And we missed that Jagdpanther 2 who was cresting the ridgeline, meaning that we waste our first shell and we reduce our DPM. I felt like I had to fire then to that T-44 so he gets taken out by our stirrer and mill, and now I'm sat here waiting in no man's land kind of for a minute, and I'm just having to rely on my teammates to keep me in this situation. I'm turning around so I can escape at a moment's notice. I didn't really want to leave this dreadnought on that hill on his own, so I think I turn around and I go back and try and help him. We do have TD support behind us, and I was kind of hoping that would deter the Caliban and the Jagdpanther 2 from coming over as I get these final 2 shells into the magazine, or these only 2 shells into the magazine, I should say. But then comes another contender in the Warlord. He puts a shell into the Dreadnought, takes him out unfortunately, and starts to unload on us. We get a shell into him, leaving him on 118 hit points. I'm asking for support from this stirrer and Emir and the other TD, but they obviously don't have shots on this Warlord, and you're seeing here that the armour on the Caliban, it kind of works sometimes, kind of doesn't sometimes. It's something that you definitely can't rely on, but it can save you occasionally, so it is nice to have, and it's much more effective when you're using your 10 degrees of gun depression and you're using the turret armour, because the hull and the lower plate are pretty garbage on the Caliban. We managed to reverse our way very, very slowly. I should have just turned around anyway at the start there after the Warlord was taken out. We reverse into this nook and we're going to try and get our DPM back by loading our 2 shells back. I'm umming and ahhing still about whether to leave. I don't want to leave this stirrer and mill as well because he was supporting us. But these kind of indecisions could cost you the games, and they might well cost me. We'll have to wait and see. I felt like now was the only time I'm going to have to get out, whether the Caliban hits me or not. I'm just going to have to escape because that was going to be a death trap for me. I'm just trying to wiggle as much as possible as you can going 33 kilometers an hour. I think a shell just whizzed past me, so hopefully that was the Caliban missing, and now I'm going to go back towards the base and defend from that position because that just wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure there'd be tanks flanking us. So in this game you're seeing how bad mismanagement of shells and auto-aiming, things like that, can really screw you over in a tank like this that has this exceptionally long reload. We're now going to have to try and play a little bit more sensibly to get something out of this game, because it's looking like it's going to be a really, really bad defeat, and we're going to see what kind of damage you can pull off if you play sensibly in the Caliban when you are top tier. So our next contender is this HMH M51. That's going to be a very easy penetration with the HESH right through the front of his tank, and this is what you should do in the Caliban. You should be firing your first shot, waiting for it to reload and firing again, and keeping that second shell just in case you need it, so you keep the whole amount of your DPM. The DPM is worse with the auto-reloading gun package, but only by a sort of marginal amount compared to the single-fire gun package, and that's how you play this auto-reloading gun package. The most efficient sort of way, the only time that you want to fire both your shells off is to finish someone off, or to do a substantial amount of damage, leave someone on a one-shot that's a tier above you or something like that. You'll see there that even when you are sort of aiming in properly and you're sort of halfway aimed, this thing can derp even at short ranges. Sometimes it is really poor gun handling, and now we're stuck in an awkward position with the Scorpion G helping us out, and it's going to look like we're doing absolutely nothing. I'm trying to communicate to the Scorpion G that I am reloaded just to let me reload. It can look like Calibans are doing nothing for a while, and it's basically because they are just reloading, trying to stay safe. The only other thing you can do whilst you are reloading is try to distract your enemies, act like you're loaded, and try and sort of get people to bounce off your turret or try and spot for your team. But the only other thing that you can do is just hide like I am now. And I felt like I had to fire that last shell off there, the second shell of my magazine, because it was going to be the last round that I was going to fire in this game. There's only 2 tanks down the one line that are holding that flank, and it's me holding off this SU-152, or these 2 SU-152s I should say, and I felt like they were going to come and push me, which they should have done because they would have killed me by now, but they are letting me reload, which is the mistake that they are making. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be enough for me, but I just wanted to include this replay to show that if you manage your shells well, you can have some pretty good damage games when you are top tier. You could probably do quite a substantial amount of damage if you are allowed to reload, but if you don't let this thing reload, then it can get taken out very, very quickly indeed. Now we're coming up against Stirrer Mill. For some reason I didn't adjust my aim to go through the front of his tank, because I would have probably one-shot that Stirrer Mill, yeah, unfortunately for me we only do splash damage. And now our next contender comes up in the Oni, and it really is 1 against A, and it's going to be the end of the road soon. So I reload both shells in the magazine, and I'm going to have to just fire them off. I'm trying to find the best opponent to fire at next. I'm looking for the one that has the most hit points. I'm going to try and get round the SU and run away. I was going to ram this SU, but unfortunately he backs up. We get our ammo rack or our loader damaged, and that's definitely not what you want to happen in the Caliban, because that's detrimental. As he's coming in, we go for a round just to get a little bit of extra damage in our last kill, and now it's just, yeah, it's going to be the end of the road here. I felt like I was going to be killed with the next shot. I'm just trying to get one more shot in. It's always that case of getting one more shot in, even when you are in a position like this. You've always got to try and win. It's just going to boost your XP, it's going to boost your silver earnings, and you never know, you might pull off a Caliban in a position like this. But with 87 hit points and tanks coming at me, I didn't feel like I was going to, but we do manage to get one more shell in. We're firing the HESH, so we can splash, and we get one more kill out of this game. So I played this game well in parts, but for sort of 60% of it I played badly. But I wanted to show what you can do when you play badly and what you can do when you play well, and the kind of damage potential this thing can have when you are top tier. So that was a Mastery Badge Ace Tanker on a loss with 1397 base experience points. This was obviously on the first day. So 5 kills, 5.7k direct damage, 198 assistance, and we blocked 1400 damage, showing you the armour can work when you are top tier. We make 352,000 silver with the op that's going on for tiers 8, 9 and 10 at the moment, so I wasn't too disheartened with that defeat. I just wish I played better at the start, but I hope this gives you an indication of what you can do with the Caliban. The Caliban, not the Caliban. The Caliban would obviously be some kind of weird skin for the Caliban, but one last thing I want to mention is that compared to the PC version where they had made changes to the HE mechanics, we are lucky that the Caliban can splash damage for a substantial amount of damage, sort of between 100 to 300, depending on what armoured plate you are hitting. So if you don't penetrate, you can splash tanks with that, and it's something to think about. You can track tanks, get assistance that way, and so on. But that's it for my review of the Caliban. It's not a serious tank, it's not the most competitive. There are far better and far more worthwhile tanks getting at tier rate that are going to be more competitive, and this will probably be on offer at some point in the future. So unless you are a real big fan of derp tanks, then I would probably not go for this. But that's it for my review. Thank you all so much for the support and getting over 1,000 subscribers. Again, there will be a giveaway going on in September, so keep an eye out for that. Plenty more content to come as well. And until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.